Here at Are We There Yet? We love to explore cutting-edge technologies, projects, and companies in the world of transportation and mobility, and there's so much happening in that world today. And an individual that really is at the center of the world with some of the companies, projects, and organizations that he supports is the Chief Executive Officer of Brain+Trust, Tim Hayden. So really fortunate to have the opportunity to speak with him today. Tim, hello, and welcome to Are We There Yet?
Hey, Grant. Thanks for having me.
Of course.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, thank you so much. Well, I know you're a very busy guy and have a lot of really cool stuff going on, so I really appreciate you taking the time to spend some time with us today here at Market Scale in the Are We There Yet podcast series. So thank you so much for that.
You got it. Thanks for having me. You bet.
Of course. Well, as I shared, Tim, I just have really enjoyed not only being connected to you, but just learning more about some of the organizations and companies that you support. And as I shared with our audience here today, you really are just, I think, at the center of this world in terms of just cutting edge technologies and things that are happening in transportation and mobility. Right. Would you mind maybe telling the audience a little bit more about who you are?
Sure. Well, Tim Hayden, as you said, but I'm the CEO of Brain+Trust. We're a consultancy that helps brands really be future ready. We don't think there's anything such thing as future proof, but it all starts with data, right? And with data, it's a combination of data science and then setting them up with the right platforms or the right hybrid cloud environment to basically understand their customers and understand their business better than they ever have before.
Yeah, very good. Especially within transportation and mobility, we have so much data now and so much information and so many things happening that I think it's such a relevant discussion within the Are We There Yet podcast series. And I know I've really enjoyed just seeing some of the different verticals that you support, kind of within transportation and mobility. Would you mind maybe speaking to that a little bit and maybe, talking about some of those verticals that you support and that you find are really in need of your services and support these days?
Sure. I mean, as I think you know, and as you guys cover on a regular basis, mobility is the thread that goes through everything. It goes through every industry. It goes through every life. One of the nonprofits that I support, it's a board that I used to sit on with Movability, really is about how to show people alternatives to single occupancy vehicles. And what does that mean? It just means that you think about how we as Americans have really matured over the last century, where the vehicle has become part of our identity. And you look at the migration over the past really 5 to 10 years and where more of it's headed to the southern half of the country, many of these cities were never built to handle the populations that they have. And if everybody's driving their own car, just one person with 6 seats, it starts to create problems with space, right? So, one of the things we've looked at is just with data. For instance, when you have competing carpool programs or platforms out there, is there a way to anonymize data and let the two platforms talk to each other? So if someone's looking for a ride, the drivers on this platform may be able to take passengers from this platform, right? And I'm trying to offer that in a practical sense because there's a lot that goes into that, but it's all about finding ways, in my big belief, the entire world's connected as it is, right? About 75% of the vehicles that are on the road right now are connected to the internet, if not in real time, every day at least, right? Yep. And because of that truth, we have tremendous opportunities to do better for the drivers themselves, right? We have the opportunity to do more and help the performance of car dealers, insurance companies, anybody who's helping with smart city planning right now. There's a lot of things we're doing in that world right now. But what's the one thing that's through all of it? And it's data, right? And how do we do better with it and do more with it?
Yes. I think that's a really important point and concept, that it's not just kind of the method of transportation, and there's a lot happening there in terms of just development of different types of vehicles, right. And things like drones delivering products, for example, or micromobility and scooters and different methods of transportation, and that's very important and crucial to making all this happen. But this concept of really taking that data and really using that data and that information to kind of expand the capabilities and realize the potential of all of this.
Yeah, no, I think that's just it. If there's one thing the pandemic did, is it accelerated the investment in new last mile and first mile delivery systems, right? And we all realized that if we wanted to get a case of wine delivered to our house when we weren't going anywhere, we could do that, right?
Yeah.
Or anything else we wanted to do with Amazon, DoorDash, or anything else. And as you look at urban areas, that's where you start to see drones and robots that are starting to be utilized to be able to bring goods and services from a storefront, retail, or warehouse back to someone's house, right? And I think that's where there's a grand opportunity right now, just to rethink infrastructure and rethink how we go about methodically and programmatically programming our lives.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
Has data and information been something kind of historically that's kind of really helped get us to where we are today? I'm sure that there's more of a need to use that data and information to kind of define what this future of kind of transportation and mobility looks like. But has that data, that information, that interpretation of it, as you and your company do, been a big part of kind of getting us to where we are today and kind of starting to figure some of this stuff out?
Well, I mean, I would say there's always been data and there's always been information, right? The funny thing about artificial intelligence right now is that the algorithms that are digitized, that are allowing us to make sense of large data sets, this is math that's been around 60, 70 years, right? This is math that was originally on chalkboards and in notebooks, where people were trying to understand how they could handle complex mathematical equations and situations and questions, right?
Yeah.
And now we're digitizing it, and now we're being able to make sense of it. So I would say that information's always been a part of progress. Okay. It's always been part of what advances us as a society and as a culture and as an economy, right? All three of those things are interdependent with each other. Yeah. And at the same time, I think that the information, I chuckled a little bit as you were asking the question, because I don't know that everyone used the data the way they were supposed to, but they had the data. They certainly had it.
Had the data. Yeah, but using that, turning that into kind of information that we can use was maybe kind of the obstacle that maybe we're starting to do a little bit more, through individuals and companies like yours. Yeah, interesting. What I can definitely, it resonates with me when you talk a little bit about, how some of the current infrastructure wasn't set up just for the way the population has grown and our expansion into suburbs and things like that. And I live in an area about 30 minutes east of Dallas here, and that city's infrastructure certainly isn't set up for the population there. And it's just kind of a nightmare in terms of just the local traffic, and especially on a Saturday when everyone's home and they're out doing things. Right. And just this idea that, to get 2 or 3 miles up the street takes 20 or 30 minutes. It's kind of crazy, So certainly I think that infrastructure isn't set up. And that seems to be kind of, to your point, a major need for kind of this future transportation and mobility, is just to figure out the best way, how to most efficiently just get around and do what we need to do, but in a more efficient manner.
Well, absolutely, Grant. You said it. You said 2 or 3 miles.
Yes.
Okay. If you're 2 or 3 miles and if you're east of Dallas, it's pretty flat out there.
Yeah.
So when you talk about infrastructure, right, and we talk about infrastructure, the way most people will talk about it is we don't have enough lanes, we don't have enough parking spaces. Right. Nothing wrong with that. But what also is not there is a protected bike lane, right? What's also not there is wide sidewalks, right? Yes. I didn't say anything about buses or trains. I just said you didn't give people something that the able-bodied human could do just to hop on their bike or their e-bike, which are selling like hotcakes right now, and easily just leave the car in the driveway and go wherever you need to go for 2 or 3 miles, That's what I think we're starting to see with urbanization, with protected bike lanes and lanes being replaced by some type of protected thoroughfare for bikes. They're also using a lot of those lanes for some of the robots and things that are doing deliveries, right? So you've got multiple, I would say, verticals and multiple movements or progressions that are going to force that to replace vehicular traffic with something else. And I think what's fascinating about bicycles, if we could digress for a second, is just that bicycles have been around longer than cars have, right? And now they're electrified. And really anyone, just about anyone who's able-bodied, right, could ride a bike for 10 miles today, And we have grand opportunities to do something about that. So when you think about it, it's just for all the right reasons, because in many ways you can look at the car as really a symbol of the American economy throughout, right? We wouldn't have drive-throughs in fast food restaurants. We wouldn't have drive-throughs at banks, right? Banks would have fewer transactions if there wasn't for catering to the car, right? So I think there's good reason we have what we have, but there's ways that that's going to change in the future. And I think it's going to change fast.
Yeah, it seems like it is. And I like that. I love the idea of this future where we're getting into some of those other methods of transportation. And I love, too, the idea, I think you said something that is really important, that it takes investment, from the city, state level, whoever, company collaborations, into really kind of setting up the infrastructure for some of these other types of transportation that we know, like bikes and things like that, is much more efficient, because it seems like kind of historically our answer to a small area, as I live in, has just been, we need more highways, we need more lanes, we need more bridges, instead of looking into some of these solutions, because I see those projects happening today, 2023. I mean, on my way home, there's a major bridge project that's happening. And I heard a statistic recently from just a relatively small city here in the DFW Metroplex that spends $1 billion a year on just highways. And so it got me to thinking, gosh, what if a small portion of that was investing into some of these other, bike lanes and other methods of transportation? Just a fraction of that, I feel like, could go a long way.
I think so too.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at there are places in Colorado, certainly Madison, Wisconsin, and the area around it, where they've taken old train lines and they've turned them into bike trails, right? They've turned them into bike and hike trails, right? And people find that if they just budget the time, they can walk places or they can ride their bike places, and sometimes bike places and get there faster than you could in a car, right? And it's actually easier to park a bike than it is a car, right? But I think at the other side of that is just what's happening on the safety side, right? We have every major OEM right now is pushing product out that has two things on it with lane assist and adaptive cruise control, right? And we have other sensors on those cars that prevent us from running over somebody who's playing in the driveway or whatever, avoiding collisions, right? And we're well on our way to where we will have a very near future to where we'll have autonomous vehicles. It'll start with trucks, right? It'll start with long haul trucks, which logically to some people scares them because there are these big, heavy vehicles that cause a lot of damage if something goes wrong, right? But they're actually the ones that are the most predictable. They're the ones that are most predictable. They go on these long routes, so they're not making lots of turns, right? They're not. They're scheduled in a way that you don't have to worry about things and human error as much, and so they're easier to automate. Really, at the end of the day. So one of the things from an infrastructure that people don't understand is we have to build the same infrastructure on our roads as we have in the air right now. For airplanes, most people don't know this, but if you get on any major airline in their jets now, there's not a whole lot of flying the pilot does, right? I mean, the pilot taxis it out, hits a button, just figuratively speaking, and the plane takes off, and it flies to where it's going, and the pilot may engage again, maybe while they're landing, but certainly as they're landing and taxiing again, right? All of the sensors that are at play there, from satellite technology to radar technology to low energy Bluetooth to 5G technology, other sensors that are involved on the vehicles, the fuselage, and the plane itself, as well as what's there at the airport and 10 miles away from the airport, right? We'll have to have the same thing along the highways. So one of the things we're doing at Brain+Trust right now is we're working with a little bit of the infrastructure funding that's coming in to build data exchanges to basically inform the public infrastructure network nodes that'll be along State Highway 130 in Central Texas for the first wave of autonomous trucks that'll support Samsung and Tesla. So when you think about where we've got to go, it's really exciting to not think so much about how people will be displaced by the fact we're not building internal combustion engine vehicles anymore, but that we're going to create millions more jobs to build the infrastructure and build what we need for a lot of these newer and safer capabilities to come to market.
I love that. Newer and safer, and as you said, gosh, if we're okay with it at 32,000 feet, we ought to be okay with it, to get us out of our driveway and head up, to the supermarket or something like that. So already,
which is probably just as dangerous.
Yeah, right, for sure. Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, and I love the idea too of even just using things like bikes a little bit more, and that's a pretty powerful statement that we're all, for the most part, pretty capable of logging 10 miles on a bike, and that's no big deal. And as you described that, I thought to myself that from probably about 6 to 15, right, that was my method of transportation, and I had no problem getting around and probably logging those 10 miles a day. So, why can't we do that more as adults? I think makes a lot of sense. Right. And one thing that I really like about you, Tim, is that, you really practice what you preach. And so as you describe all of this, you are certainly an individual, as I understand, that's kind of moved away from a reliance on some of these traditional forms of transportation, and really have integrated some of these better, more efficient ways of getting around in your own personal life. Do you mind telling us a little bit about that?
Sure. I mean, I've lived in Austin for 22 years. For a short time, I had an office in Manhattan. And so when I go to New York, I found out real quick it was quicker to walk across Midtown than it was to take a cab. I took the subway sometimes, but I walked all over that city, right? And when we went to go buy a house in Austin, we bought one that was close to a train station in a neighborhood where we had good insight into what would be developed around it, right? Okay. So we could think about home value, home appreciation, but also to know that my office was downtown and that I'd be able to ride the train. There was a 2-year stint, and I just love telling this part of the story, that we kept that house and we moved out to California, and I joined Signal Labs for 2 years out there. We lived in Sausalito, and every day I would go over to the city on a ferry from Sausalito to San Francisco, right? And that's probably on the spectrum of absolutes, right, of extremes.
Yes.
Because I've got a boat that's taking me to work, and I'm going by Alcatraz, and twice a year a whale gets in our way, and we have to stop. I'm late to work because a whale got in the way,
right?
But the key thing is in all of the above, riding the train, walking in Manhattan, riding a boat in San Francisco Bay, I started to understand how much better my head was when I got to the office, right? 2 things happened. I was scheduled, right? If I'm riding the train, I know I'll be home for dinner. That makes my wife happy.
Yeah.
Makes my kid happy.
Yeah.
And it makes me happy, right?
Yeah.
And I'm a car guy. And deep down, I'm a car guy. We cannot include not include that.
Sure.
In this conversation.
Yes.
I'm a big time car guy. I love cars. I love auto racing. But at the same time, for me personally, staring at red lights and staring at tail lights, or getting on Mopac, which at 4:00 in the afternoon is a parking lot. That doesn't do any service or benefit to my disposition. I wouldn't call it mental health thing. It's like I get depressed commuting, but certainly I'm in a much better frame of mind if I rode the train home and I walked a mile from the train station back home. I'm in better physical shape for it as well. So to me, it was behavior change. There was the obvious quick calculation that if you buy a new car, your cost of ownership is double the payment, right? When you factor in gas and parking and insurance and ultimately maintenance and repairs, right? Everything that goes into it, and it's a depreciating asset, And I remember from economics in high school about studying about appreciating assets and depreciating assets.
Yeah.
And it just became really easy for me to find things. Yes. Not everybody has that luxury, right? To your point, talking about where you live, right? You don't have options. You don't have alternatives. So you got to drive a car. Yeah. But I live in a place, and I've lived in places where I had that alternative. And with it, I now seek it out everywhere I go, You land at the Denver International Airport, you take the train into Denver. There's no reason to rent a car, because for the 2 or 3 times you got to go more than a mile, you can get an Uber or a Lyft, right? So it's been more about, people like to say, well, that's multimodal. And I said, it may be multimodal, but I'm finding faster, better ways to do things, and I'm just in a better frame of mind because of it.
Yeah, I love that. I love too that it's not just kind of the right thing to do, and that it's better, and it frees up a little space on the highways, and you're not using as much gas and all of the good things that come about, but that at a very individual level, it's something too that you found to kind of, relax yourself a little bit more and kind of maybe adhere to a schedule a little bit more and get home at the end of the day in a little bit better frame of mind. So I like to hear that too, that it's something that really personally we can benefit from in our lives too. So.
Well, that's just it. I mean, I like electric cars.
Yeah.
But do I like electric cars because I'm out to save turtles? No, not necessarily. They actually have more torque than a dually diesel does, right?
Right.
They're quicker.
They're
faster. Than gas-powered cars.
Yes.
They're quieter, and because they don't rattle, the car doesn't rattle, right?
Yes.
They're quieter. So.
Right.
To me, it's when I talk to people, when I meet people, and we talk about these kinds of things, right? When we talk about the changes that are happening in transportation, I'm always quick to share my personal story because I wasn't out necessarily just to alleviate congestion or pollution or be sensitive to the environment. It had nothing to do with that. It was just that I found that life improved, actually, as I started to find alternative means from getting from point A to point B.
Yeah, that's really cool. I can really really respect that and see value in that. And I've benefited from it a little bit too. As you said, I may not have as many options in terms of kind of my commute to work, but certainly when I travel, I've enjoyed more recently here just using some of the different rideshare options and technologies and trains in and out of cities. And you're right, when I'm headed to that event or that meeting or that conference or whatever it is, I'm in a little bit more relaxed state of mind, just not having to deal with it and the parking and the rental and it is nice to kind of just hit a button sometime and sit in the back seat and just meditate for a little bit, or whatever. So
that's right.
Yeah, that's nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you mentioned you're a car guy. I'm a car guy. We talked about that a little bit, within connecting and I love too a lot of the things that are happening, in the automotive industry too. And I think that there's a lot the OEMs and leaders within that industry are doing some really cool things, some really important things in terms of the EVs and the autonomous technologies and the safety technologies, which is such a great thing. And we spent some time, you and I both, at NADA 2023 here in Dallas a few weeks ago. And gosh, wasn't data and technology and platforms and SaaS solutions such a trend at this year's conference at NADA? I would love to hear just some of your oversights or insights from attending the conference. What were some of your takeaways kind of within what you do specifically within the automotive industry?
So this was my second NADA to attend, and I've spoke at SEMA for 4 out of the last 8 years. And NADA used to be more like SEMA in that it was things that people were coming to talk about, right? Furniture, what would you put in your showroom kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
But this year, really, and it was here in Dallas, right? We really saw, and it's what we were here to talk about as well, was the investment that dealers want to make in data. They're finally, I think dealers and general retail automotive, franchisees, tier 3 to the small independents, right, are all understanding that they need to do more with their data. Yeah. And the thing that I noticed really was no surprise at all is that in the car business, most people are still wrapped up at the top of the funnel. They're wrapped up in targeting and identifying net new customers. It's all about acquisition of new customers. And the truth of the matter is that customer data platform technology actually is there to help you understand the customers that you've already engaged, right? If you're an older dealer, right, you have opportunities to take all the historical data and to integrate it and then model it within a CDP to understand maybe contextually and certainly meaningfully how to go out and reach out and contact and engage your customers that you already know. So that's, in a nutshell, what we're doing right now is specifically talking to, I would say, everything down to independents. With we have new artificial intelligence solutions for less than $1,000 a year. We can go in and we can provide them with cyber risk analysis. One of the things they have to do with the FTC safeguard rule, we can help them start what they need, understanding what they need to do on that FTC safeguard compliance journey. At the same time, we have other AI agents that we can deploy into systems that will allow us to start the process of universal entity resolution and start to be able to build what everybody knows a CDP is meant to do, is a customer data platform, golden customer record, right? One record for the person that was identified as Bob, Robert, and Bobby. It's just Bob, right? Building that one record. And I think we have solutions that allow us to go down market and work with every dealer, and then we have other solutions on the CDP front that allow us to go into the big dealer groups and find those organizations that have 50 to 150 rooftops, and instead of a CDP for each one of those 150 dealerships, from a rooftop standpoint, we've got the opportunity to have one CDP that has all 150 dealers of the rooftops data go into that one system, which will save them across the group hundreds of dollars per customer in terms of their acquisition efforts, but at the same time, what they can do to start to build lifetime value, right? What can you do to understand what I think Sewell has really quite literally written the book on, right? Which is that one-to-one relationship that you have with somebody on the floor. Is the same person that sold you the car is the same person that you reach out to when your check engine light comes on, right? And to be able to do that across a Sewell that's here and a Sewell that's in Arlington or a Sewell that's in Austin, right? It didn't matter if it was a Cadillac here and I just happened to have a flat tire in front of a Lexus dealer. I can just go right in that Lexus dealer with my flat tire in my Cadillac, and they know who I am, right? That same thing that's happening there, right? That's now possible for any dealer to do that with the use of machine learning and with customer data platforms. And that's what we're excited about, I think, more than anything else when it comes to retail automotive.
That's very exciting. It really is. It's something, too, that I think it's such an opportunity for dealers especially to partner with you and your organization, because I think many are feeling a bit overwhelmed with just all of the technologies that are out there and how artificial intelligence, plays into their operations. And just, they have a lot of data, but how to make sense of it and turn that into really usable information and just improve what they do can be a bit daunting. And so I think an opportunity to partner with your organization that can really help make sense of all of this is quite an opportunity for them. And I'm finding now, too, that it feels like the technology and especially opportunity of partnering with a company like yours kind of levels the playing field a little bit, right? I mean, anyone, even from the smaller independent dealers, very affordably can really start to take advantage of some of these technologies and compete with maybe some of the larger organizations or dealerships, for example. And so it really is something that I think is kind of levels the playing field a little bit and empowers some of those smaller dealers to be even better at what they do.
Well, and I think that's where the dealers that do start to invest in the known existing relationships that they have with customers will start to zig while everybody else is still zagging, right? While most folks are still wrapped up in conquesting, right? How do I look at the population growth and new intelligence that lets me see VINs and when a car has been owned for 4 years or when it was just bought, I mean, there's fascinating and useful intelligence that's out there in the marketplace, but it's not there just to drive net new sales. It's a huge opportunity to sit there and say, how do we grow value in the folks that have already opened their wallet to us? And that's not limited to the car business. That's what I see with a volatile marketplace right now, with a stock market that's up and down and interest rates where they are. The economy and certain verticals in the economy are not going to move as fast or grow as fast as they were a year ago. And so where can you go? Instead of just being out there in the ether to go try to find people you don't know, concentrate on who you do know.
Yes. Very good. Very good. Would love to ask you kind of a general kind of open-ended question in a way here, but I think you would be one that I would be very curious to kind of get some of your insights on. But as you really are in a unique position to see a lot of this information and especially kind of thinking of it within kind of a transportation mobility perspective, we talked a little bit earlier within the conversation about how it can kind of improve and maybe free up some of the existing resource, and we can get into really started to adopting some of these other methods of transportation and mobility in our personal lives in an ideal scenario where we really are focused on making some of these things happening and investing in the infrastructure, and at a personal level more of us doing things like riding bikes and different things like that. Would you mind maybe just commenting and maybe just a few kind of ideas or insights into if we all can kind of continue to move in that direction and support a lot of what you've talked about today, what could 5, 10, 20 years look like in terms of how we kind of move around?
Wow. I mean, I think that we're going to see sales of electric bikes only increase, right? I do believe we will start to see the OEM and dealer relationship start to morph into, if you're going to go that far out.
Yes.
You're the one who's talking the horizon there.
Yeah.
You laid the horizon out there. And I think ultimately we'll subscribe to fleets.
Yeah.
For 10 years in Austin, we had Daimler's Car2Go fleet that we could use with nothing but a mobile app. I could walk up to a car, or from 3 blocks away, I could reserve it, and I could walk over to it and open up the doors, get in it, and for 89 cents a minute, I could drive that car anywhere and park it for free. I didn't have to pay maintenance on it. I didn't pay insurance on it. I didn't have to do anything else. And they did that for 10 years. For the last 2 years, they took the smart cars away and they put baby Benzes out there for us to drive. But having experienced it, right? And what I do with Turo right now, just as a practical story. When I flew into Dallas today, last night at 10 o'clock, I reserved a 2023 Toyota Highlander, and got a free delivery of it at the airport. I didn't have to wait in line or get on a shuttle to go to a rental car. I just walked out of the terminal into the parking garage. There was a car. I've sent a text. The doors unlock. I get in, and I drive away. Right? I took some pictures of the car, but what I mean by that is it's shared, right? You were talking about shared rides, shared carpooling, right? And what I think is the future is maybe we don't all get on buses. Maybe we don't all get on trains. Those are services that are going to continue to grow, and infrastructure to support them are naturally going to be things that come to market. And I think more people are going to ride all of the above. But I think at the end of the day, our relationship with car ownership, especially with that horizon that you're laying out there, is going to be more about fractional ownership or a subscription model, right? I have an 11-year-old son. I think he may have that opportunity by the time he's 18, right? By the time he's 18, I always joke is we'll probably get him a car that, or get him access to a vehicle that's shared with 5 other kids within the same 2-block radius.
Yeah.
We'll be able to program it only where we want him to go.
Sure.
He'll get in it and hack into it and go anywhere he wants to go.
He'll probably figure that out.
We'll have
to keep up with him there.
That's right.
For sure. I love that. It's really interesting. Almost kind of like transportation or mobility as a service, moving beyond kind of this ownership to where, it's a service or kind of shared product that you use. So that's really interesting. I know that as a result of the interview, and I know there's a lot of people and companies that you're already working with and are interested in learning more, about partnering with the organization. But I know as a result of today's conversation, there's going to be a lot of individuals out there, companies out there that are going to be excited to learn more about partnering with you and your company. Would you mind maybe just directing the audience to your website or where they can learn more about the company?
Sure. Brain+Trust Partners is our website. We are currently ratcheting up what we're doing from a content standpoint there, both from a blog standpoint and from a podcast standpoint. We're looking at launching an analyst business to where we might have some subscriptions to white papers and other reports as we're starting to understand what works in different parts of the world and how it could be applied in other parts of the world, right? Yes. I think that's one of the biggest opportunities we have right now, always through the data lens. But our website is the central place for that. And then on LinkedIn, if you just search for Brain+Trust, you'll find really quick, you'll find information that both I and other members of the team are sharing. Many times just commentary on current events and announcements other companies are making, because at the end of the day, we think the only way that all of this succeeds is if we, as I said before, everything's connected to the next thing. If we're not talking to each other, if we're not having conversations about API connections, and looking at ways to even anonymously be able to share information with each other, then we're going to constantly be in a place where we're experimenting all by ourselves. Mm-hmm. And that experimentation by ourselves ultimately is what got us in the jams that we're in today. Yeah. And I think a collaborative and an integrated approach going forward is really where it's going to be.
Absolutely. Well, we're collaborating. We're having a conversation today, Tim. So we're doing it, and I definitely would encourage more of this and more of this collaboration and communication. But it's been just a lot of fun for me to have this conversation with you today. So really appreciate you taking some time to stop by and to share some of your insights with our audience. Thanks for that.
You bet, Grant. Thanks for having me today.
Very welcome.
Enjoyed it.
Thank you.